Hello, Emilia. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon, sir. Can hear you.
Oh, okay. David,
Yes, good afternoon, sir.
how are you? Yeah.
Very fine.
Um, am I very clear?
You are very clear, sir.
Okay. Great.
So we're trying to add people and access people because there's a waiting room.
Sorry?
There's a waiting room, so we are trying to admit people into the waiting room.
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. You gotta have a control. I want you just Manatuyo.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar. My name is Emilia, and I will be your moderator for this afternoon. We will just allow a few more minutes for our second panelist to join. And once he has, we would start the conversation. I think I see him already. So we'll just take 2 more minutes and then we'll start this conversation in 2 minutes. Thank you.
Orang guru. Nah, orang guru. Yes, le. Barka.
The race for 5G mobile network is on. It is no secret that the subject and concept of 5G so far has generated a whole lot of controversies and postulations. However, one thing is certain, that the adoption of 5G would definitely open up numerous opportunities and cause disruptions to various industries. In light of the COVID-19 pandemic, it is important, very pertinent, that we discuss and analyze the impact of COVID-19, both on new technologies and old technologies, as well as share future challenges and opportunities. It is on this note that I'd like to welcome each and every one of us to this edition, to this webinar. Thank you all for gracing this webinar with your presence. Before we commence, I'd like to set a few rules that will ensure a seamless and a smooth session. If you look at your screen, there are a few rules on your screen, so please go through it with me. So first and foremost, please, all mics should be muted at all times. If you have any contribution to make, please make use of the chat box. Look at chat below your screen, you'll see a chat box icon. Please click on it and then post your contributions. No one is allowed to speak unless the moderator gives you permission or allows you to speak. Please, if you have questions, if you have anything you want to say, please make use of the question and answer icon and then post your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rachel. As I said earlier, we warmly welcome all of you to this webinar hosted by the Telecommunications and Technology Sustainability Working Group. My name is Emilia Asimita. I'm going to be your moderator for this afternoon. But just before the conversations begin in earnest, I'd like to invite my colleague, David, who will tell us a bit more about the Technology and Telecommunications Sustainability Working Group, otherwise known as TTSWG. So David will take us through just a short introduction for a few minutes, and then we'll start the conversations with Engineer Wakil and Mr. Ido. David.
Thank you very much, Emilia. So I believe when we have about TTSWG, a lot of us would have asked ourselves exactly what TTSWG means. It's a short form of Telecommunications and Technology Sustainability Working Group. This working group is a multi-player network of organized critical stakeholders cutting across the telecom and technology industry. It's currently championed by about 8 tech firms and telecommunication firms, as well as the regulator and an NGO. What the working group seeks to achieve is to try to see how we can integrate sustainable solutions, adopt them, and address challenges faced by these sectors, come up with innovative ways to move the sector forward, as well as see how generally there can be a sustainable development of this industry. There are 4 critical areas or 4 pillars to which the working group focuses on. One is research and advocacy. They support with research activities to move this industry forward. The other is capacity development. What does that mean? As things advances, as technology advancement takes place, we are going from 3G to 4G to 5G, and hopefully maybe one of these might we never can tell. Because we see that there could be a lacuna in terms of skill set. So how does this working group help fill those lacuna in the industry? That happens to be one of the focus areas of the working group. Very important is also policy. We are aware that policies drive a lot of things. So the working group seeks to support the sector with relevant policies, not just to integrate sustainability, not just to drive environmental practices or sustainable practices, but it's also to help develop not just this industry, but the country in general. Finally, will be resource mobilization and intervention. We believe that as these industries are concerned, that various interventions are needed to support and improve the socio-economic well-being of Nigeria. So the working group also engages in resource mobilization and relevant intervention to support this industry and generally for the socio-economic development of Nigerians and the country at large. After this presentation, I would also want to share more information about the working group. This is just a summary, and hopefully, we'll find that you all will be interested in joining the working group after this time out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. I know that that introduction might have a few more questions. We're happy to take those a bit later, just before we wrap up. You would agree with me that with the burden of innovation comes the burden of responsibility and sustainable development. And we're just trying to ensure that sustainability is mainstream as the technology and the telecommunications sectors develop. But this afternoon, we're talking about 5G and deep tech opportunities for the future. And I have with me two very qualified experts, technical experts on the subject. The first is the Director for Technical Standards, the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, Engineer Bako Wakil. And the second is Mr. Omotayo Idowu, who is the Country Technical Officer for IBM in Nigeria. I'm going to quickly introduce them formally before they answer the first question. Engineer Wakil is a graduate of Electrical and Electronic Engineering from the University of Maiduguri and Information Systems Engineering from South Bank University in London. He's a member of the Nigeria Society of Engineers, Institute of Incorporated Engineers, and Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, COREN. He's widely read with vast experience in high-frequency radio and satellite communications and diverse knowledge and experience in spectrum management, spectrum monitoring, computer networking, cost estimate evaluation, project management, and monitoring. He has almost 20 years experience working in these fields, and he's previously served as a special assistant to the Honorable Minister for Information and Communications between 2007 and 2008. He's also served as the Assistant Director, Directorate of Technical Cooperation in Africa for 2 years, 2003 to 2005. He's also served as Chief Engineer, the National Space Research and Development Agency, NASDA, between 2001 and 2003, and as Principal Engineer for Ministry for Foreign Affairs, Overseas Communications Department from 1999 to 2001. Apart from this, he also served as Regional Engineer for Europe and Head of Communication at the Nigerian High Commission in London between 1994 and 1998. Very knowledgeable about mobile broadband technology, including 3G and 4G, and might I add 5G, as well as sustainability practices in the telecommunications industry. It gives me great pleasure on behalf of the working group to warmly welcome Engineer Bako Wakil, Director Technical Standards, NCC. You're most welcome, Engineer Wakil. Also with us this afternoon is the Country Technical Leader for Global Markets for IBM West Africa, who's based in Lagos. He drives strategic, transformational, and complex multi-brand engagements for the technical ecosystem and also manages C-level relationships with clients, bringing and fostering innovation and agility inside and outside of IBM. He joined IBM in January 2012 as a Global Technology Services Leader for West Africa. Prior to that, he was Head Data Center Services for First Bank and also led the IT operations of FBN at the time, covering solution design and architecture, project management, and infrastructure services that enables all the IT services of that large bank. He's highly experienced and skilled in public sector innovation, technology for development, and information and communication technology for the banking and government industries, balancing a unique experience with strong interpersonal skills and technical depth. He's also a digital economy practitioner, he's a scholar, and he's a development strategist with capacity for policy formulation and implementation at both tactical and leadership levels. He holds an executive MBA from China Europe International Business School and a bachelor's degree in mathematical sciences, a computer science option from the University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, here in Nigeria. He's an alumnus of the Harvard Business School, Manchester Business School, and a doctorate student at the moment at the Swiss Business School in Zurich. He's married with children and a keen sportsman. I won't ask, with a passion for tennis and football, I won't ask what clubs you support. So we don't go into an interesting conversation this afternoon. But you're most welcome, Mr. Motayo Ido, the CTO for IBM. So I guess we can kickstart this conversation almost immediately. And I'd like to start with you, Engineer Wakil. What exactly is 5G? And why is it currently such a controversial or a bit confusing topic?
Thank you very much, Emilia. I think I am being heard clearly, right?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this forum. And I'm really glad to be here. And I want to thank all of you for the wonderful job you've been doing for the industry. A little bit of correction in terms of my working experience. I think I have over 30 years actually of working experience, postgraduate working experience.
Noted.
Having said, what exactly is 5G? It's a very interesting question. And but to answer this, I really want to take us to a bit of a memory length. You recall the first generation of mobile network was switched on in Japan in December of 1979. This is about almost 40 years ago. And at that time, the network was an analog and without any interoperability, in the sense that if you are connected in Lagos, you cannot even come to Abuja and use it. So it was analog without interoperability, and so very much vulnerable. All you can do is to make a voice call on the move. Now, since then, after every 10 years, a new generation of mobile technology is being, introduced. And as I said, the requirements and needs of humans are changing by the day. So when we got the first generation, people started asking, okay, why can't I send a message to the person if I really don't want to call? Because with the first generation, it's only voice call. You cannot even send a text. So that's when the second generation now came with text messages, at least 60 character text message. So you have a voice, you have a text message, and it is digital. Now, along the line, people started asking, why can't I have access to the internet on the move? Because traditionally, we only access the internet while we were in the office or at home, through a PC or laptop connected to a, landline. So those questions also triggered, and then the IMT 2000, which is the 3G, now came in, where you can able to access the internet on the move. You have the voice call and you have the text message. Still, people started asking for more. Okay, why can't I do a video call and have a much faster, internet connection? In that, 4G, research came in and started almost immediately after launching the 3G. And by year 2010, we have 4G LTE launch, where you now have video, voice, data all together. So that is how the evolution came in. And still, people started asking, you see, the one we have in 4G is still, not good enough for certain functionalities and requirements our society. Therefore, we need to control everything, probably in our household and all that. So how can we make possible massive connectivity? How can we make possible, connectivity that with a very, very fast response time, very low latency? That's how the issue of 5G came in. Therefore, 5G is a network designed to meet a very large, growth in data and connectivities of our modern society. Things like Internet of Things, where billions of devices will be connected. And in addition to a very fast connection and greater capacity, 5G also presents an important advantage of very fast response time known as latency, very low latency. So these are what 5G stands for. And so therefore, 5G has a large data capacity, has very huge in terms of device connectivity, very fast download speed, as well as very low latency in terms of action and response time. Maybe because of time, I will stop here with what 5G is. Thank you.
All right, Engineer Wakil, thank you so much. I'm certainly going to come back right on that and to ask why it is a controversial subject. But I'd like to ask Mr. Edu very quickly. So I'm sure you already know all of the things that Engineer Wakil just shared. But from a business perspective, what does 5G mean to a business like yours, and of course to a medium and small enterprise, as you have the majority of businesses in Nigeria form?
Thank you very much, Amelia. Hope you can hear me. Okay.
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Thanks to the entire team. Thanks to the group for inviting me as well to join Nigeria Bako for this very wonderful session. And I actually hope that it will really worth it at the end of the day for every one of us in order to grow the sustainability group as we originally have the concept. Basically, if we go down the evolutionary approach taken by Engineer Bako, then we'll quite understand in terms of where and how this 5G will be applicable to businesses in Nigeria. From the explanation given, which is very, very clear enough, how customer dynamism and requirements keep on changing from basic tests, to the much more high demanding video that we are in today. We need to first of all understand the fact that, as he mentioned during one of his comments around what 5G really stands for, it's imperative to realize the kind of investment already made by telecommunication companies or CSP in trying to build those series of generations of wireless networks. And as actually it grows from the first generation to the fifth generation we are talking about now, which is the 5G, statistics actually confirm that about $1 trillion was invested between 2010 and 2018 by various carriers, CSPs, in order to upgrade to 4G. So the primary key issue here is the fact that most of the organizations are still even trying to upgrade even their current investment with respect to 4G. They have not fully amortized it. So that brings us to a point whereby they will actually have to prioritize the adoption in terms of whether it's to focus on the enterprise or the consumer. So, and that is where the issue of who actually would the CSPs or the carriers actually will focus on first becomes very imperative. So going by that, we hear from Engineer Bako how various CSPs actually are trying to direct and equally admit as many, basically to sweat out the existing investment they've already made on series of, upgrade to the generations of wireless network that we have, even up to the current 4G and LTE. So in terms of adoption, the focus will be to sweat it out and gain, to amortize it over a period of time. So that will be the first thing. So, and that will actually involve things like by deploying what we call new radio, which in engineering terms, I think Engineer Bakoko will explain that better maybe by the time we continue. But those new radio will bring in a kind of new, a non-standalone deployment, which allow 5G services to be over on 4G core. So various organizations, first of all, the enterprises, they will leverage on that. Then at much more later part of the deployment phase for 5G, then it will reach out to the consumer. But primarily, the investment in the existing, wireless network, generations of networks actually made it imperative for various CSPs and providers to focus more on enterprise rather than the end user consumer. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Idu, for that, clarifying, the fact that from what you said, that there's still a lot to do to get return on investment, and to make the maximum, to take the, get the maximum benefits from the investments in 4G, and then the possibility of rolling out 5G technology on existing infrastructure before really scaling up fully. But I'd like to go back to Engineer Baku very quickly to say, now this conversation is double-sided. But before I go into what I mean by that, I'd like to ask, what are the challenges with 5G? And maybe I should ask a direct question here, because we all saw that there were celebrated trials that were conducted on 5G. And then somewhere along the line, a few weeks ago or months ago, with the rise in controversy, it seems as though the Commission has put that forward. So would you clarify for us? Because for one thing, it seemed as though, very forward thinking, gone ahead, with other economies across the globe to move forward on this, and now it seems as though it's been put forward. What are the challenges that, from where the Commission sits or from where you sit in your work, that have been associated with this, and did that inform the decision to put that forward for now?
Okay, thank you very much. To start with, I think the controversies actually arose from misinformation by people who have some, vested interests. And for the NCC, the trial, let me just save this for now. At the moment, there is no 5G deployment in Nigeria completely. There is no 5G. And the test trial that we call a proof of concept trial that was given to MTN was on the request of MTN. Actually, it was not the initiative of NCC. So MTN requested that, please, could you allow us to demonstrate using our own existing spectrum, the spectrum that we are holding right now, to demonstrate how 5G, looks like. That was why that 3 months proof of concept trial was given to MTN, using their own spectrum in 3.5 gig and in 26 gig. They already have those spectrums, and they did the trial in 6 locations: in Abuja, Lagos, Calabar, Abeokuta, Ibadan, and Kano. And that was just also for us to see, what kind of lessons we can learn from those. For instance, in the 3.5, we've seen some level of interference from their existing wireless, fixed wireless network coming from the, from MTN. But by and large, it is a request from MTN because we did not have 5G policy and plan in place. So that is why we stopped it. And also, you can imagine because of the misinformation, the public, and this is not only limited to Nigeria, the entire world, when it comes to 5G, there are a lot of misconception and misinformation. But I will get to that, but why we hold it on is for us to put in place the necessary policies and plan for the deployment of 5G, including, the spectrum planning, because there are a number of spectrums that have been identified for 5G in spectrum below 1 gigahertz, spectrum between 1 and 6 gigahertz, and also the millimeter wave above 6 gigahertz. So we need to plan and replan those that are already existing, and plan those that have been newly identified in the millimeter wave, in order to continue the program. And also we need to educate the Nigerian public properly, so that people are really aware and they get the right information from the right sources, rather than getting misleading information from sources that are not subject matter experts around. So that was why we slowed it down. But work is going on right now. There is a committee working, putting in place the necessary plan for 5G in the country. And you can imagine also it might take some time, because even by GSMA estimation, they were expecting 5G commercial deployment in Nigeria and some other African countries around 2025, because of so many factors, including availability of devices, because at the moment there are no many devices, 5G devices available. So until many countries deploy 5G on commercial basis, and the manufacturers now continue to manufacture devices based on economy of scale, and becomes a bit cheaper, because at the moment it is extremely expensive, and there are no many devices. So it may take some time before actually we can have 5G in commercial deployment, notwithstanding at the NCC will put in place policies that needed to be put in place for that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Wakil. Just to quickly add that you can send in your questions from now. If you have any questions or comments, please send them in. I would like to take them as I ask, my own questions, not to wait till the end and now try to accommodate all the questions. So I'll be happy to ask questions as we move along. So if you have any questions, please send them in. Use the Q&A box that's below your screen, or you can put it on the chat section, but I prefer the Q&A so I can pick it up faster. Engineer Wakil, just to double check and reconfirm some of the things that you said, is there is currently no 5G technology or service in Nigeria. That's one. Then you also said that the tests that were conducted, that 3-month window, wasn't an initiative of the NCC, but it was a request by one of the telecommunications companies for approval to do this. And then you also said that there is no 5G policy yet in place, but there's a committee that is working on this, and that updates and developments would be announced as the committee's work progresses or at a future date. Just to reconfirm.
Yes, absolutely. There is no 5G deployment. Those test sites were immediately after the formal launch. For instance, the one in Abuja, immediately after the formal launched by the minister and other stakeholders, the next day it was decommissioned. And in some cases, it's the same equipment that are also being taken to another location to carry out the test. So even the 3 months period that we have, it is not that we have a 5G signal for the 3 months. No, it's just the 3 months, to carry out the test in the various locations. So there is no 5G deployment in Nigeria at the moment. And there is a committee working in the office to bring in 5G, plan, develop policy on 5G, going forward. And at the moment, everything has been decommissioned as far as 5G, trial is concerned. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Ido, we have a question for you around new radio, as mentioned in. So I'm taking the questions as we go along, just to ensure that I take everybody's question, and a bit more explanation about what the prospects and the opportunities are for advancements in technology like this, for businesses. Mr. Doe, I'm not sure you heard me, but I'll just take that again. Just
Thank you, Emilia.
question. Okay.
I heard you. I was trying to unmute myself. Yeah. Basically, let me quickly answer the question around the new radio. If you recall from the context I said with respect to how the investment in 5G actually would drive either the business or the consumer, either at enterprise level or the consumer level. I was trying to equally paint the picture based on the investment made right now between 2010 and 2018, which is estimated to be over $1 trillion US. So it is expected that most of the CSP will not rush to the core of 5G. So in the process, they are trying to create a kind of capabilities, or basically a new set of,
like an upgrade?
Not really an upgrade, basically a tool that will allow them to offer 5G services. For instance, when I say 5G services, Engineer Bako gave us the examples of capabilities we are going to get with 5G in terms of speed, in terms of ultra latency. So all these things, you can still get it without really deploying the core of 5G yet. So the new radio actually will allow the current operators to be able to take advantage of that same 5G capabilities. So that is what, in a nutshell, what new radio is in a very simple language. But in terms of what it offers for business, there are basically 3 broad use cases that we see today. And those use cases actually is equally tied to the evolutionary approach. And one of them basically is to what we say the mobile broadband, the enhanced mobile broadband. So for various businesses that really require such a very increased throughput and capacity, they will be able to take advantage of 5G. So it means more throughput for them. We heard from the capacity that Engineer Bako mentioned, whether from the one under the 1 gigahertz or maybe the one for sub-6, is much more 20 times than what we have even with the speed of LTE today. So that's one of the key advantage or what it means to businesses. The second one actually, and again, maybe before I leave that very point, it's important to take cognizance of the fact that if you look at the mobile penetration level within, let me say, in Nigeria right now, it actually averaged about 24% in Africa. Why you look at, which is compared to the about 50% we have globally. I'm talking about the mobile penetration now. So with this, one of the key use cases we see with 5G, whether with new radio or the core, is that it will allow, ability to have that throughput and increase the penetration across various, whether not only the city, but even our rural areas. So that is one thing that actually will mean for businesses. The second point is the fact that we are going to have a kind of massive machine type communication. Again, look at it from an Internet of Things perspective that requires, high density of devices. As we stand today, we have about 9 billion devices, currently connected to the internet. And this is estimated to increase to about 50 billion in the next 5 years or thereabout. Why within the next decade? I mean, that is about 10 years from now, it could actually go as high as $1 trillion. 1 trillion devices. So the proliferation of these devices demands for a machine-to-machine capability in terms of communication. So that's going to equally happen. And we are going to see this with some of the applications that we have around maybe Internet of Things applications, virtual reality, augmented reality, smarter cities, and most of those kind of highly the devices that, applications that demand more of data throughput. So that is the second thing that actually is meant for business. So it might not yet be there right now, but definitely that is what is going to be in the nearest future. Then the third one, which we mentioned earlier, is the fact that it offers ultra low latency communication. This is equally very strong. Especially when you
what does that mean? Because these are some of the terms I think that sends shivers down our spine. When we hear penetration, we're thinking, is this a health concern? So can you please explain? And then someone also asked you to please explain what you mean by CSP. So I just
CSP, sorry, communication service provider. Okay, communication service provider. Yeah, no, the third one I mentioned is basically around the latency. And Engineer Baku actually has tried to basically explain this earlier. If you look at the up to 4G, where you have maybe a delay, maybe in terms of communication point-to-point communication among various devices, maybe it's around 10 milliseconds. Maybe 100 milliseconds with respect, let's say, to 4G. By the time we have the 5G, you can have it to less than 10 milliseconds. So that is what the ultra reliable communication actually will allow us to achieve. So in a nutshell, these three capabilities or broad use cases will drive various enterprise business. At the same time, it will spill over to various consumers at the end of the day. Thank you.
all right, thank you very much, Mr. Ido. Just to take some questions here. Would you like to add?
Yes.
Okay, please go ahead.
Just around the new radio and 5G core and all that. The approach to 5G is in two ways. Because if we are to go 5G on standalone basis, we need entirely a new investment.
Yeah.
It doesn't work on this existing one at all. So the new radio approach is going to use the control plane of existing 4G to control the functionalities, while you can also still provide enhanced mobile broadband, in terms of, data, speed connectivity. But this non-standalone approach will not be able to get all the functionalities of 5G as, if it were the 5G core that was, installed. Therefore, you cannot have the ultra low latency, services that we are talking about. The ultra low latency service is that the action and response time, is less than 1 millisecond. In this case, things like self-driving cars, use cases actually is because of the low latency, capability of 5G. You can even able to do a remote medical surgery. Somebody, a doctor in US can able to carry out surgical operation on somebody in Nigeria using a prop, because as he is moving the surgical equipment, everything is moving as if he's, here in Nigeria without, any delay. So that is the advantage of the ultra low latency 5G is actually providing. So the 5G core is going to be entirely a new investment. But I think most countries will go the non-standalone, route, where we start using the existing 4G, control plane to control the functionalities while providing enhanced mobile broadband. But gradually, we are going to evolve into the 5G core, where we will now have those capabilities such as the massive time communication. Because with the 4G, you can only have few thousands of devices connected, within a square kilometer. But with 5G, you can have over 1 million devices can be connected within a square kilometer. So that functionality cannot be given, with the 4G, sandwich or kind of the upgrade. And then the low latency that I said, like that will able to cars to drive themselves without driver, not only knowing where they are going, the addresses and all that, but also the cars are aware of their own environment. They will avoid collision. They will follow, observe traffic light and all that because of the low latency. Because action and reaction time is so, short that the cars are acting as the commands are being given. So this is the issue about the new radio and core, 5G core. For 5G core, we need to discard everything. So it will be a very tall something on operators. Say whatever you have done now is completely do away with it and put a new completely network. So it's going to be a very huge investment that will be required. But we're going to follow, I believe, most countries will follow the non-standalone initially, and then with time we will evolve into the 5G core network. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Engineer Wakil. So I have a number of questions here, and I would try to merge the questions, especially those that are similar, so that we can take more questions and we can also maximize time. So the question from Habu Audu is asking, deployment of 3G networks across all operators is not fully optimized, let alone 4G. How is that being addressed? So, I mean, with the Commission looking forward to, planning for 5G, what about 3G and 4G? And then the follow-up question I'd like to ask, from another participant is saying, won't the rollout of 5G hamper the current network coverage and create some unevenness, especially with overall network topology? So I'd like to merge, those two questions for you, Engineer Wakil.
Okay, thank you very much. I think for now, it is no longer business-wise reasonable to invest on 3G. So therefore, operators are busy actually investing on 4G and widening the 4G deployment across the country. That will go for some time because, as I said, this 5G of a matter. 5G is expected initially, commercial deployment was expected this year, 2020. But we were able to have it earlier in places like South Korea, in America, last year. For instance, South Korea had a commercial deployment as early as April last year. So, but the anticipation was from 2020. And you remember, even all the other subsequent generations, by the time they were launched in advanced countries and the time it comes to our place or here in Nigeria, you find out almost about 5-6 years lapse. So the idea is we will continue to invest on 4G. 4G expansion will continue across, but not 3G anymore because there is no point doing 3G anymore. There is no economic benefits in doing that because we have 4G. So 4G will continue to be deployed, until such a time when it is actually viable for operators to deploy 5G in Nigeria. And some of the things that I told about are some of the challenges, you asked. The issue of device availability is a major problem. If there are no cheap and
Devices.
portable devices. Even if you have the network, nobody will use it. And then we even have the issue of infrastructure like broadband, fiber network across the country. At the NCC, we are trying to actually build a fiber infrastructure across the whole country. We have what we call an infraco project that we intend to deploy fiber network to all the 774 local governments of this country with minimum of 10 gigabits per second access, because you cannot afford to backhaul 5G,
With
base stations with microwave radio, because microwave has actually limitation. And because of the densification, particularly in the millimeter wave, spectrum, we are going to have base station nearly every 50 meters, 100 meters, not even a kilometer. So with that, you cannot afford to use microwave radio to backhaul. So we need fiber, ubiquitous
optics.
fiber deployment across this country. And then the issue of the almighty power. Power is a major
Yeah,
problem.
there's a question, but go ahead. And there's a question here about that. That where do we begin when we still have power issues? How do you plan to manage all of this?
Well, the government is actually trying. As you remember, they have now signed an agreement with, for instance, Siemens of Germany to improve our power network. So in the course of the next 3-4 years, as we consolidate our 4G, we think the power situation in the country will improve. We will have, broadband, fiber backbone across it, because we have lot of fiber at our seas, at our shores. For instance, we have terabytes of, fiber, line in Lagos at the shores, submarine cables. But in the hinterland, we don't have enough, fiber optics. So we will see those intervening periods to see how we, consolidate the deployment fiber and also the power sector, so that the 5G will be a reality.
All right, Engineer Bakil, thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Edo very quickly. IBM is an industry leader. You're multinational, which means you are working in different markets at the same time. Some are ahead, some are behind. Can you talk to us a bit about, and I know IBM is also big on R&D. What are some of the considerations that you're making as a business? What are you working with regulators? Are you working with regulators in Nigeria as well? Just again to get a bit of perspective from where you sit at IBM on these transition phases in technology, and what they hold for your business and for the business community in general.
Thank you, Amelia. Just to give a quick background about IBM. We are about 109 years old company, and we have actually had series of transition as well. Just like we started with 1G to 5G right now, in the same way IBM actually has been transited. From one generation of being a service or solution provider to another. Right now, we're actually proud to be a cognitive and cloud platform company. So what this means actually is that we leverage on our core capabilities around software, hardware, and services. And we use that to drive industry solutions across all the sectors. So be it government or public sector, be it financial services or financial market, banking inclusive, insurance. Then we see the manufacturing and retail. We see, name it, all the sector, transportation, aviation. We one way or the other, they are leveraging on our solutions to drive their business. So that is basically in a nutshell what we have as we speak today. And in terms of cooperation with various regulatory agencies, yes, we are trying as much as possible to actually liaise with the likes of government bodies like the ministries of communication and digital economy. We, through our Digital Nation Africa platform, where we intend to build a new set of skills for African youth population so that they can actually fit into digital economy. We are working with the likes of NITDA as well to drive some of these initiatives. There are quite a lot of regulatory bodies that we're actually working with. I'm not sure whether we are doing anything with Engineer Waki right now. I mean, at 10cc, but at the same time, I'm so sure about other agencies similar to their own, either under the Ministry of Communication or other parastatals that we are really working with or that are leveraging on our solutions one way or the other.
Like sharing best practices.
Yes, definitely. That is part of the thing. We do provide thought leadership with to either as an advice to government for them to adopt or to review internally. So we are doing quite some stuff with government as a whole and some of their agencies.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Edu. Engineer Bakila, I'll come back to you quickly. I have a few more questions here. Can you, Dr. Pokola from Edinburgh University, is asking, how do you ensure compliance to standards and safety levels by operators? Because you had mentioned, whilst you're planning forward, you're also working with the operators to fully maximize and, leverage 4G as well. So in this transition phase, he's asking, how are you going to ensure compliance to even new standards, and if possible, higher safety levels? And then he's also asking whether you're working with universities like his or local universities, again, and experts. How broad is the engagement process for all stakeholders with respect to 5G?
Yeah, thank you very much. When it comes to standard, and this is actually my bit at the NCC, I'm Director of Technical Standard and Network Integrity. And what we do, that we ensure that every telecommunication equipment that comes into this country, we have to test and certify that they actually meet international standard before they are brought in. So this is part of my job. That we type approve every equipment, whether they are base station equipments, core network, or devices. Everything that transmit or receive, signals that is going to be connected to our national, telecommunication network needs an approval of the NCC. And this we've been doing. We carry out tests, particularly electromagnetic compatibility, specific absorption rate for mobile handset and so on. And also we keep an eye on the level of radiation then, from the base stations across the country. From time to time, not quite long, just before the lockdown, we have sent out our engineers to go and carry out sample, tests on what the radiation levels are on the, across the country. And I can assure everybody that the radiation levels from our mobile, network in the country is far, far, far below the, specified ICNIC safety limit. And for 5G, one of the controversy about 5G is about issue of radiation. And let me say something here. 5G, radiation of 5G is even far, far better. It is lower than even the radiation from 4G. Why? Because in 5G, they have incorporated antennas that are smart as well as intelligent. And there is a technology known as beam forming and beam steering. Based on that, in 5G base station will just not radiate isotropically, in the coverage area. It will only radiate like a pencil beam direct to the device that is being connected. So at the end of the day,
so it doesn't spread. That's what you're saying.
Yes, total radiation in the given area is far less than those of the previous generation because of the beam forming and beam steering. So 5G radiation, from where it has been deployed, the records, the references that we have is actually, a lot lower. The radiation a lot lower than a 4G mobile phone, and a lot much lower than your hair dryer that you use to blow your hair when you get there. Much lower than microwave radio and microwave oven and all that. So it is far,
I
far
can
better.
sure relate with that as a woman.
Yes.
But Engineer Bekele, again, we have a question here by Abraham Ozovehe, and just for emphasis sake, and I'd like you to state this again. So he's asking what the radiation level of 5G is compared to 4G and 3D, which you have,
Yes.
said. And he's asking, has the government or the NCC conducted research on the full potential risk of 5G, just to calm the fears of the public. And then again, a word of advice about a campaign on this to make sure that people clearly understand.
As I said, there are commercial 5G deployments in a lot of countries, and we are comparing notes with regulators, for instance, Ofcom in the UK. They have carried out radiation measurement a lot, in various cities, after the commercial deployment of 5G. And that is where I was telling you, the radiation level they are getting is far, far less than that of the 4G and 3G. Because, in every technology, the new version is always an improvement from the previous. Not only in telecommunication, everything, whether it is a television, whether it is a aircraft. Modern aircrafts are much more better in terms of fuel efficiency, in terms of sophistication, in terms of long haul, in terms of number of people they carry, and so on. So the same way in the telecommunication, each time we have a new generation, they ensure that every aspect of that is improved much better than the previous generation. So in that case, the 5G radiation is far, far less than that of the 4G and 3G.
All right, thank you. Very quickly, Engineer Bakilson is asking what the acceptable is there an acceptable radiation threshold with respect to what you just said?
Okay. There is an International Commission for Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection. It's a under the UN agency, that actually their own job is to look at radiation and set limits.
Okay.
That body has set limits for mobile, both for the general public as well as for the workers. And in that, and depending on the spectrum, on the frequency, they said if the power density is, for instance, between 2 gig all the way to 300 gigahertz, the power limit should not be more than 10 watts per square meter.
Okay.
This is standard. Once it is below 10 watts per square meter, then it is safe for human. And what we are getting in Nigeria is not even up to 1 watts per meter square, and also in other countries. So, but the limit is 10 watts per square meter for any spectrum between 2 gigahertz and 300 gigahertz. But for the lower spectrum, for instance, if you take about 800 megahertz, it's about 4 watts per meter square. In the 900 is 4.5. In the 2 gig, it is about 10 also. So it is 10 watts. The maximum is 10 watts per meter square. Any radiation below that is completely safe for human. That is how the International Commission for Non-Ionizing Radiation, yes, limits actually put. So, and as I said, all the measurements we've done in Nigeria, none has even reached up to 1 watt per meter square.
Wow. Okay, very quickly, Engineer Wakil, I'm coming to you, Mr. Ido, for another question. Roy is asking, the lower radiation levels for 5G antennas, are they not offset by much higher number of antennas required for this new technology? You want me to take that again? It says, isn't the lower radiation levels for 5G offset by the much higher number of antennas required? Can you hear me,
Is that for me?
Engineer? Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Thank you. No, what that means is in 5G technology, we have what we call a MIMO, massive input um, and massive output antennas. So what will happen now is instead of, not all of them are radiating at the same time. Each antenna is focusing on a device or a subscriber. So that's why it is like a pencil beam. Each antenna is radiating like a pencil beam to the target device. So at the end, if you have a cumulative radiation in the area, it is far less than the homogeneous and isotropic radiation that we have in 3G and 4G network. Because in 3G, 4G, you have a radiation what we call isotropic. It's all around the coverage area without any gap, unless maybe being blocked by some obstacle. But in 5G, it's going to be the radiation is just targeting from the antenna to the device directly like a pencil beam. So at the end, the cumulative is still within the given area is still less than that of 4G or 3G.
All right, thank you very much, Engineer Bakil. Mr. Ido, very quickly, I'd like to ask, there's some questions here for you about the skills. So you are very well trained and experienced, and there are concerns with changing technology about the skill set that is required. So what opportunities exist for software engineers and network engineers with respect to 5G? So that's one question. And there's a follow-up question with respect to education, which you mentioned that IBM is sort of trying to champion through a virtual platform. And it's saying, how cost effective. Miriam Waminu is asking, can 5G help to transform education, especially for poor children in rural areas? And how cost effective would be these devices with capabilities, or even IBM solutions? Doma is also asking that you haven't quite explained, the linkages between 5G and some of the solutions that IBM provides, and again she's asking whether or not you provide services, or you still provide services for the telecommunications sector through equipment or just services. So I'll summarize. I know I've asked a lot of questions at the same time. The first is about opportunities for engineers in this new phase that's emerging. And then the second is about cost effectiveness of solutions and devices for education using 5G. Stating, following up from what you said, IBM is trying to do through the digital nation project that you mentioned.
Yeah, thank you, Emilia. The first question is around the opportunities for engineers, developers, the ecosystem, basically. There is a particular research carried out by IBM Institute of Business Value, IBV, where we see that 52% of the industry analysts believe that our graduates don't have the prerequisite skills to work with the kind of job that actually are available. So likewise, even some of the schools that are even producing graduates, about 49% of these schools equally believed that most graduates don't have the required skills for them to operate in a digital economy. So if you take that into the balance among various constituents, so that means overall the society itself is disappointed with lack of skills, while even the school that's supposed to be churning out the graduates are equally disappointed that graduates are not really, they don't really have the right skills that they can use to work in the society. So it's a triple dilemma. And this is one of the reasons why. So in a nutshell, what we are simply saying, what we see today is that there is a lot of mismatch where there are jobs that are available, but the people that want to do those jobs, they don't have the right skills. So this is where the idea behind Digital Nation Africa, which is a platform that IBM built to really train African youth with respect to new skills. As we speak, the website actually, in case we want to take note of it, is www.digitalnationafrica.com. We have three categories of, skills that we are trying to provide for anybody that wants to acquire a new set of skills. The first one is around basically to provide literacy, with some of these emerging skills or exponential skills, as we call them today. This includes the likes of Internet of Things, blockchain, security, even so those are core of those courses that you can learn online with the lab, everything provided actually for you. Then you see the one that we take through what we call it a Digital Nation Scholar. So that means if you want to, you can go beyond the literacy level and use that to get, to come to a point whereby you can say you are a professional. You can learn how to become a blockchain, maybe architect, where you can be a security architect, and many other skills that you can acquire. So, and you can use that to work, that links actually to various organizations that are providing jobs. So this includes things like a software developer that the person that has the question actually is talking about. So be it developers or architects, or that platform is meant to build you and give you the right skills. And not only that, we actually do that with certifications. So this certification allow you to be, based along with other industry benchmark that you have the capability, you have the required skills, to really deliver on using those skills.
Are these for free, Mr.
Yes,
Ijebu?
definitely. They are they are all free, no strings attached. And as I maybe possibly explained, maybe in Anori earlier, we signed an agreement, maybe which some people might have been very quite aware about it, with the Ministry of Communication to train as many Nigerians as possible on that platform. We are currently working with Empower, where some of these course content actually they are adapted in order to really ensure that our skills are our talents have the right skills and the new skills for them to operate in the digital economy. So opportunities exist, but the skills must be there. And IBM actually prefer, and we actually provide such a platform for anybody that wants to skill up, and to leverage on this digital economy to rally around it. So that one is provided, and we can always leverage on it. The third part of it is actually almost similar, whereby you might not want to work for anybody, but you want to become a kind of startup. So we equally provide, series of incentives. So having given you the training, having given you the skills, you might want to be, as we are talking about the impact of this 5G network, it's going to open up a lot of skills by the time it's fully here. In the sense that, for instance, if you take things around smarter applications, that you can use to drive the automation, the fourth industrial revolution. All these things require various level of digitization. And people that have this kind of skills, they are the ones that will be able to take advantage of those opportunities. So there's an opportunity. At the same time, there's a platform through which actually you can develop yourself from IBM to African citizen.
Even for low-income earners, someone's asking about what it translates to for low-income earners.
Yeah, for low-income earners, there is a kind of, let me put it this way, there are various governments at various levels, they are doing a lot. without really, for instance, we know some state governments, in order to reach out to various low-income earners, exactly. So they are equally trying to exactly leverage on this platform in order to do something, to customize this skill, to make it available for them without necessarily, injure their pocket. A typical example, they will customize it and give them the device, and possibly in some environments they even provide the capability for them to work, offline on those devices. So these are the ways through which you can leverage on some of these platforms that we provide, even as a low-income earners today.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Edu. Ino was asking that you didn't quite provide, or you didn't explain how 5G is linked to IBM's businesses, and she wanted to clarify if you still provide any telecommunication equipment, or you've gone fully to cloud solutions and software.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I think that was the third part of the question you asked earlier. I think I've addressed the first two around the opportunities for engineers, and the second one, the cost effectiveness of the DNA platform is free. Now, with respect to IBM, telecommunication actually is one of the sectors that we play in, and we are very, very strong when it comes to telecoms sector as well. However, we are not into production of let me say 5G equipment or any of the, let me say, antenna or something. Not at all. Rather, if we look at the evolution of this from 1G to 5G as well, one of the key things actually we need to look at is that we are at the forefront of some of these exponential technologies. A typical example is artificial intelligence. With our Watson platform, at the same time, where you combine that with edge computing and 5G. So 5G actually becomes a kind of, it enables that integration or fusion of those technologies for them to be able to offer a new set of services. So from services perspective, yes, we are very much involved, and we are one of the clear leaders when it comes to this. But when it comes to the equipment side, we leave that to some of our partners. A typical example, maybe Nokia, maybe Huawei, maybe Ericsson, and many other more. So that is the way we structure the business from IBM perspective.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Edu. We'll have our first poll for this session. I'd like you to please respond. How relevant do you think this topic is? How insightful do you think speakers' responses have been? Would your organization or you be interested in joining the group? And how would you like to know more about this? And would you like to be invited and reminded to participate in subsequent editions of this webinar? So the poll is up. Would you please participate? We'll give that a minute or two for you to do that. And then I have a sort of a fire round question I'd like to ask Engineer Bako, just a few other issues, quick responses, and then we can start rounding off. So Engineer Bako, go back a bit to some of the questions here. So is there going to be a bid process for the spectrum auctioning for 5G like was done for GSM? If you could just give us a yes or no answer. Is there going to be a bid process, for spectrum auctioning for 5G as was done for GSM?
Yes, certainly it's going to be,
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there a timeline for this? Mahmoud Zimit is asking.
No, at the moment, as I said, the
It's still
committee
working
is working out the 5G, policy document. And, in our normal characteristic, we normally, do also stakeholder consultation. So we're going to do a stakeholder consultation, to even, try to see, in all the identified spectrum, which one are we going to go first? What will be the size of the spectrum that will be, sufficient and required for, to start deployment and all that. So we're going to do a stakeholders, consultation seriously, and then the policy document will set out the timeline.
All right, and Jawakil, you can be rest assured that we will follow closely, and also follow up on that. Mark is asking, yes, there will be a recording made available. Please send us an email. If you check your screen, you'd see the contact details. Please send us an email. Or if you register to attend, we'll send a recording to you as soon as possible. Another question for you, Engineer Wakil, from Asmal. Should a service provider in Nigeria now planning to start 4G deployment in some areas hold off until 5G or keep going?
No. Keep going. Keep going.
Keep going.
Because we need those 4G in every nooks and corners across this country. Keep going.
Okay.
Because you're going to
Audu. Okay, thank you very much. Habu Audu is asking, 4G and 5G deployments require large numbers of sites per clusters. Some of our communities are still hostile to deployment of new sites, thereby posing a threat to this development. It doesn't seem like the NCC is doing enough in enforcing the building of new sites. Or what is the NCC doing, if you'd like me to rephrase that, to support in building of new sites in communities where there's some level of resistance?
Yeah, actually, what we are doing is to using our various enlightenment campaign instrument and occasions to enlighten the Nigerian public, but at the same time this is something that is going to be gradual. But what I know also is when it comes to 5G, the base stations are not going to be those kind gigantic that will draw the attention of people a lot. So it is going to be a much probably tolerable kind of base stations that will come up. But we will continue to engage the public, to for them to understand the importance of having those base stations, because that is the live wire of the mobile network. Without the base station around, you cannot have service. So we will continue to engage people. But this is something, of course, gradual, because people are entitled to their own land. And the Nigerian structure also, even though the telecommunication is in the exclusive list, which is in the domain of the federal government,
Federal
when
government.
it comes to environmental issues, like site acquisition, you have the state authorities that have say, constitutionally. So we just have to engage them. Now, right now, we've started, getting resolved in terms of right of way access. A lot of states are either completely, waiving over right of way charges,
Right away.
or reducing it to
Crashing
the
it.
145 like the federal. So we are winning gradually, and the governments, state governments, are understanding where the role of telecommunication in socio-economic development of their people, in terms of job creation and so on. So we'll work with the state governments and other agencies, and also the operators themselves, to overcome this situation.
I'm glad you, Engineer Baku, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that Professor Ken Amishi from University of Edinburgh just asked the question around the contributions to SDGs, how sustainable this is, environmental impacts. I know you've spoken to the threat to health earlier, but I'd like to merge this question with another question about rural telephony and USPF. So the person is asking, in efforts to drive penetration to undeserved markets, what are the clear plans? And again, it's mentioned USPF, which is an agency under NCC, to drive data telephony to undeserved markets or rural areas. And then Professor Ken is also asking about contributions to the SDGs and environmental impacts.
Okay, in terms of environmental impact, normally before, for instance, base stations are sited, there is environmental impact assessments
Assessment.
being carried out by the operators, and it is being supervised by the Nasria and the Ministry of Environment, actually, in particular. So there is environmental impact assessment being carried out before any site is actually any base station site is actually acquired. For in terms of um,
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 data telephony for undeserved
okay, rural,
communities.
rural. Yes, the Universal Service Provision Funds actually has identified, the service gap in Nigeria. Uh, as at the time, I think about 2 years ago or so, they have identified over 200, communities where there are no service of whatsoever, and they have a plan on how to actually meet, and close those gaps. Even though they're actually looking and reworking on the methodologies and method they are using. But it will certainly take some time because operators normally wouldn't go to areas where they cannot make money. I know operators, there are a lot of sites in this country where the amount of revenue being generated cannot even provide for the fueling of the generator
Yeah.
in those communities. Yeah, so the USPF is working, hard to see how those gaps will be, uh, you know, you know, um, um, bridged
Okay.
in terms of service provision in the country. Yes.
All right. So we will just take two more questions, and we'll ask one to you, Engineer Wakil, and then I ask one to Mr. Edu. To sort of as we round off. The question to you, Engineer Wakil, is so there are a number of questions, and I will summarize them. So there's the concern from Joseph Dokare around the costs of devices, and in terms of with respect to the transition. There's another by Oloye that is asking about the present architecture, how much of that will be expected to change. I know you've spoken about upgrades using existing infrastructure rather than starting afresh. And then there's another question about timelines. What is the expected? Akorede is asking, what is the expected estimated timeline that Nigeria will join the rest of the world based on the advantages that we have mentioned? So I'd like you to speak to that. Ugochi asked, but I think you've addressed this already, how realistic it is to penetrate rural Nigeria with respect to the guarantee of infrastructure that we had spoken about earlier. Yes, so I think I've covered
Yes,
that.
for the transition, as I said, it is going to be a very tough this thing for operators if we say we should just transit to 5G at a go, core 5G. So we will still, I think, go through the path of the non-standalone approach, approach where the existing 4G infrastructure is used in providing at least enhanced mobile broadband services. And in terms of how long it is going to go and take,
Or take.
and then the device availability, because that device availability is not actually determined by Nigeria or any of the operators in Nigeria, because it is a business case. So the more countries deploy 5G, the more manufacturers will make devices available, and the more they make it, it becomes a lot more cheaper. So it is I
Still
cannot
evolving.
sorry.
I said it's still evolving.
It is still evolving. Exactly, it's still evolving because this is about money. It's about business. But I know that as more countries deploy 5G, the devices will be available, and then the cost will come down. As to exactly how long it will take in Nigeria for us to have 5G, I cannot say, but as I said, the GSMA estimation was starting from about 2025, but it may come a bit earlier. It may come earlier.
Okay. So
like as
2025 or earlier.
yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Engineer Wakil. So last words, final question, Mr. Ito, here from Fatih B says, what plans does the technology industry have towards sustainability in the future to come, especially in Nigeria? Okay, she's asked it another way. What plans does the tech industry have towards a sustainable future in Nigeria? So I guess you can merge that with your last words, and then we'll take the last words from Engineer Wakil, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, thank you, Emilia. From sustainability point of view, technology industry basically have a lot of prospect. If we look at the opportunities that exist within the 5G services alone, is so massive. For instance, MarketWatch estimates about $253 billion US for the 5G services market between now and 2023. And
Okay.
and when you take that in the next 6 years, it's expected to grow by 1,000%. That is close to about almost 600 and something billion US. So there's a lot of activities to keep the technology industry actually on the sustainable part of business, provided they get themselves articulate, properly leverage on the technology, build the right skills, ensure that we collaborate, with the right regulators and all those stuff. So I think in a nutshell, that will surely happen. And if you look at it again from the impact, overall
Environment
impact,
and social.
yes, very good. From environmental, from social and socio-technical forces, maybe to put it that way, we'll find out that technology will continue to drive the sustainability. And we could see from whether even the last part of industry that is being digitized, which is retail and manufacturing, is so massive because of the enablement coming from 5G, or from the capability coming from 5G. It is driving some of those benefits that we really anticipate. As a parting word, I think it's important that I leave this with all of us, whether the industry players or the regulators, as I have Engineer Wakil with us as well. If we remember we need to learn from look at it from a historical perspective. We need to learn the first mover advantage from one transition of generation of network to another. If we take a closer look at what happened from 1G to 2G, which we've all listened to, Europe actually took a lead, and this is where we saw the like of Germany and Germany and some other European countries like Nokia and Ericsson that actually led that battle, and they won that 2G era. The implication here is the fact that they were able to generate a lot of revenue, in billions of pounds or euros, as the case may be. At the same time, they were able to create a lot of jobs. So when we take then the ecosystem itself is massive. So in terms of the opportunity that they were able to tap into, by the time 3G was coming up, we equally saw how Japan, beat US to it. By using the first mover advantage, from both competitive positioning and the rollout and deployment. So that equally translates to the same thing and ultimately lead to overall quality of life, for the Japanese, because most of the adopters of 3G actually, they were leveraging on the standards, created by the early adopter or the trailblazers. Then we saw the 4G, despite the fact that US actually came a little bit behind. They were able to, take the leader. They were able to take the leadership in terms of 4G deployment and the attendant ecosystem. We all see the kind of the standards they were able to create, and everybody started following the same standard. The likes of Netflix, Google and Co, they were able to benefit from it because And at the same time, jobs they lost while they were having the 3G, they were able to regain it back in not only the 4G era and the LTE. Now the 5G, who is going to win the battle? So the first mover advantage is very key for us here to learn. Even we, despite the fact that we are not among the early adopters, as Engineer Wakil mentioned, though we have seen MTN already announced that the first one will be available sometimes I think this year in South Africa. At the same time, GSMA actually estimate that there will be about 28 million devices on 5G network by 2025 in Africa, which is just about 2.7% of about 1.6 billion devices that are expected to be on the 5G network in 2025. So when we take a closer look at some of these figures, we need to learn from that transitioning. We need to learn from that transitioning such that we'll be able to take advantage, because whosoever actually they take that first mover advantage will be able to control billions of dollars from revenue perspective. Then we'll be able to create more jobs and be able to drive a lot of sustainable for the entire ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Idu. Thank you. And I hope that as a continent, we can also watch closely and see what opportunities, even if it's from the skills angle, that we can lead and play an active role in the development and the mainstreaming of 5G technology. Engineer Wakil, your final words, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Emilia. And I think one thing I want to recognize is our operators are also very forward-looking, and they are interested in making progress. And so I think as soon as the operators are ready to make those necessary investment towards the 5G, and once the policy documents is in place, I will assume we may have 5G in the country much earlier than predicted. But we also need to work on the understanding and acceptability of the general public, because of the already misinformation that has gone around. So we need to do a lot in terms of enlightenment and information. But I assure you, we are going to put the necessary policy in place for the 5G, and depending on the readiness of our operators in terms of the investment that is required, I believe we're going to move forward. Thank you very much. Hello? Emilia? Hello?
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So I'd like to say thank you. Thank you so much to Engineer Wakil and Mr. Motayo Ido, Engineer Bako Wakil, the Director, Technical Standards for NCC, and Mr. Motayo Ido, the Chief Technology Officer for IBM Nigeria. Thank you. We're able to answer 35 questions from participants, and I think about 5 or more from me. So I'd like to thank you. Thank you to all who joined. This is the first in series of the webinars that will be organized by the Technology and Telecommunications Sustainability Working Group. The next edition of this webinar would delve deeper into the core sustainability issues. I saw a number of that come up, and our speakers have addressed them, but perhaps we would look deeper into those issues at the next edition of the webinar. But I'd like to thank you all for coming. All about 100 participants on Zoom and many more watching via YouTube, and for all the questions and the robust engagement that we've had this afternoon. We're 10 minutes behind schedule. We had promised to end at 5. So I'd like to say, if you have any questions, suggestions, interests, and any further inquiries about the Telecommunications and Technology Sustainability Working Group, please see your screen now. Send us an email or call us, and we'll be glad to give you more information. Thank you to our speakers once again. Thank you to all our participants, and thank you to all the members of the TTSWG for your support and your active participation to make this a success. I look forward to welcoming you to another edition. Thank you very much, and have a very good evening. My name is Emilia.
Thank you, Amelia. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, sir.